Folks, welcome into another edition of Hot Topics right here at pubsportsradio.com. We're getting you ready for the draft. Jeff, we got about 2.5 to 3 weeks to get ready for this. Offensive lineman is the talk of the day. Let's take a look at some of these good ones, especially the top 5 offensive linemen in this class.
Yeah, I mean, Donnie, as we know, with offensive linemen, they're the key to any good football team. Without an offensive line, you're just not going to be a good football team. You go back and look over the years since we've watched football, there's not a lot. Donnie, do you know any team that's won a Super Bowl that didn't have a dominant offensive line? I don't. That's how an offense runs. You obviously have to block up front. You need to be able to run the football. Some of these teams that are trying to become good football teams, they need to go and add. And there's some really good linemen, Donnie, in this draft.
Yeah, if we take a look, Jeff, at that top 5, because obviously we like to look at the top-heavy teams or the teams that really need offensive line play. And you're right. The way to be successful in the NFL is protect your young quarterbacks. If we're looking early in the draft, let's just say in the top 5, Jeff, there's a couple of guys here that are stacked up. Jedrick Willis, Tristan Wirfs, also Mekhi Becton. In your estimation, who's the first guy off the board here out of this class?
Yeah, I really still believe that it's going to be Jedrick Wills. I'm not going to say he is the best offensive lineman, but I think he fits what the New York Giants want to do. If you know anything about Joe Judge, he is an Alabama guy. He coached in the SEC for a lot of years. I think there's a connection there with him. I think for me, Dottie, though, there are in the top 10, there are like 3 or 4 teams I think take an offensive lineman. You look at a team like Jacksonville, they really have to address this group. I mean, they addressed it recently. You're going out and getting a guy like Jawan Taylor last year, but Dottie, unfortunately, only Jawan Taylor can play on the right side. He can't play on both sides. He can't just stand there and block everybody. They need to continue to invest in this offensive line. Again, I still think they're a team, Donnie, that I find interesting. I mean, do they go out and get a quarterback? You've got to wonder, will they make a move? Is Gardner Minshew really the guy? I guess they'll continue to think he is. I think they go offensive lineman. And Donnie, how about the Arizona Cardinals? I mean, they're a team that I think has to start protecting their quarterback. I saw many games last year. I know the one in particular I remember, Donnie, was Arizona against San Francisco. And I think you remember this game as well. Kyler Murray just running around. He's got nothing, and that a lot of it has to do with his weapons. But the offensive line, when your quarterback's running around a lot, that's not necessarily good. They need to address as well. But yeah, to me, I think Wills is the first guy off the board. My favorite offensive lineman is Mekhi Becton, Donnie. This is a guy out of Louisville that I think is one of the more fascinating people I've ever seen at the combine and in general. You know everything, Donnie, about obviously what you need to be a good football player. But you look at Becton, I mean, truly fascinating numbers. I mean, this guy is 6'7", 365. He's an absolute massive human being. He's got 35, almost 36-inch arms. I mean, the guy's unbelievable as far as what he can do. He ran a 5'1" 40. I mean, that's unbelievable. That big of a human being can run that fast. It's really unbelievable. He's a road grader. He's a guy that's going to just in space, just going to destroy you. You have a 7-foot wingspan, Donnie, an offensive lineman.
No, it's amazing to look at some of these guys and over the years how much, you're talking about a guy 365 pounds, 25, 30 years ago in the NFL, barely anybody was, hovering even around that 300-pound mark. So these athletes are fantastic. Let's take a look from the fan side perspective, Jeff, here, because we get a pretty good look here being Philadelphia Eagles fans. A couple years ago, who sat fourth in the draft? The Philadelphia Eagles. You know who they went out and got? Lane Johnson, and all-caliber, all-pro type player to anchor in that right side, and you end up with a Super Bowl victory a couple years later. When you take a look at the New York Giants here at that number 4 spot, you have the young quarterback, you have the young running back. It's not the sexiest pick to go offensive line, but damn it, if you make the right pick at right tackle or left tackle, you can have a Pro Bowler for 10 to 12 years over there that can be a stalwart of your team.
Yeah, and again, it just really goes back to what I said earlier. I mean, again, I have no interest in a team that cannot block up front. I mean, you win in the trenches in the NFL, Donnie. It's that simple. You have to have a good defensive line. You have to have a good offensive line. It's pretty simple. And again, if you don't have it, you will not win. I couldn't agree more. I mean, look at over the years at some of the great offensive linemen and how their teams have kind of held together. Look at the Indianapolis Colts, Donnie. They're a prime example of how to build an offensive line. And indeed, it can sometimes even mask moderately good quarterback play. So you might not even have to have the best quarterback, but if you have time, any NFL quarterback, no matter what level they are. If they have time, they can make throws. They can do more, Donnie, than you or I or anyone else can do. They can find avenues. And that's a guy like Jacoby Brissett, Donnie. He was a better quarterback because he had a good offensive line. He's not the greatest player in the world. He's not a top 20 quarterback in the NFL, but he was able to do things because he had weapons and he had a good offensive line.
Jeff, let's take a look and have some fun with this because I always like to ask you some questions off the fly. If we take a look at these offensive linemen heading in, I'm going to give you a two-pronged question. The first part of the question is going to be, give me one of those gems that might not go in the first or second round, but maybe later in the draft that you think could be a serviceable offensive lineman, but also give me one of these top guys that you think is going to go in the top 3 rounds who you say, you know what? I think the guy's got a good chance to be a bust.
It's so tough with offensive linemen to really find busts. I mean, we've seen it over the years, even in Philadelphia with the Winston Justices and the King Dunlaps of the world. Yeah. As far as a guy that I'm starting to really like, Josh Jones out of Houston. Yeah. This is a guy that's Donnie, when you get an offensive lineman, I want big offensive linemen. I'm not just talking about big from a mass perspective. I want tall, big people. And that's one thing that Josh Jones is, 6'5". He can really kind of command a lot of space. He's going to take a lot of space up. You look at from a strength standpoint, he could be one of the stronger players in this draft. I mean, I just mentioned Becton, Donnie, 370 pounds almost. I mean, Josh Jones did 24 reps. Becton 22. So this is a big kid. He is strong, kind of reminds you of a Bobby Massey type of player. Just really can climb and get to the second level. He's going to be good in that ability to block. And Houston plays kind of an interesting offense. I think a lot of people, when they had Greg Ward, they were kind of a passing, rapidly quick offense. But once they started to move to De'Ara King, they started to feature a little bit more in the run game. I think he's a guy that can run block really well. As far as a bust, I don't know. I don't. Maybe Wills. I think he's kind of interesting, just from a perspective of he's not the biggest. Yeah, he's not the biggest kid in the world either. He's 6'4". All these other guys are in the 6'5", 6'6", 6'7" ranges. Donnie, that's the interesting thing as well about Becton. Becton could be a bust as well, and I say that because he is so big. Yeah. Does he become to the point where
400 pounds?
Yeah, he has the weight problem where he just can't. Donnie, sports and professional sports is so much related to work ethic and your ability to not be lazy. Do you love the game? We talked about it the other day on SBR with a guy like Joe Burrow. I think Joe Burrow can get far in life because he just cares. He seems to love what he does. There are guys that I don't think Cam Newton loves being a quarterback in the NFL. The same thing with Becton. He has to fall into that level of, does he want to be a Shaq type of player or does he want to be a Robert Tractor Trailer type of player? That's really where he has to go because his weight could be a problem. You start getting up to 380, 390 range, you're just not going to be real effective.
No, and it's a lot to go over here. Again, we're only about 2.5 weeks outside of the draft. We're going to preview each one of these groups each day here on pubsportsradio.com. And it's a lot of fun to go over, Jeff, because each day we're getting new information. And again, with not a lot of the sports going on, we can really focus on it and bring that good information. He's Jeff Nadeau. I'm Donnie Seymour. Tune in tomorrow for another version of pubsportsradio.com. Hot topics. We'll keep bringing that fire, Jeff, right up through draft day.